Wealth is not just measured by the size of your bank account, but by the size of your character. It's not only about what you have, but about who you've become in the process of earning it. If you took away every dollar from someone who has developed wealthy habits, who has mastered discipline, who has cultivated resilience, that person would find a way to build it all back again. Why? Because wealth is not something you hold in your hand, it's something you carry in your mind and your heart. Money can come and go, markets rise and fall, opportunities appear and disappear. But the person you become in the pursuit of wealth, that's what endures. I learned this truth early in my journey. When I was young, I thought wealth was just about having money. I thought the secret was a bigger paycheck or the next opportunity that would suddenly turn everything around. But over time, I began to realize that even if someone handed me a fortune, without the discipline to manage it, the wisdom to grow it, and the character to protect it, it wouldn't stay for long. You've probably heard stories of lottery winners who went broke within a few years. Why does that happen? Because the money grew, but the person didn't. They never developed the internal wealth to sustain external riches. The wealthy understand that the first investment is not in the stock market or real estate, it's in themselves. It's in developing discipline, learning patience, mastering emotions, building resilience, and sharpening skills. If you become the kind of person who can create value, solve problems, and stay steady under pressure, wealth will inevitably follow. And even if you stumble, even if you lose, you'll have the strength and the wisdom to rise again. So when you think about wealth, don't just ask, how much can I get? Ask instead, who am I becoming in the process? Because if you focus on becoming more, you'll inevitably attract more. True wealth is not what you accumulate, it's what you cultivate. And once you become that person, no loss can ever truly take your wealth away. So many people get caught in the trap of trying to look rich instead of actually becoming rich. They spend money, they don't have to impress people they don't even know, and in the process, they sacrifice their future for appearances. A new car, a designer suit, the latest gadgets, these things can make you look like you have it all together, but if your bank account is empty and your investments are non-existent, that appearance is just a mask. True wealth isn't loud. It doesn't need to announce itself. It grows quietly in savings accounts, in investment portfolios, in real estate, in ownership. I'll never forget the man who lived in my town who drove an old, worn-down truck and wore simple clothes. If you passed him on the street, you'd never guess he was wealthy. But behind that modest appearance was a man who owned acres of farmland, multiple businesses, and had investments producing steady income year after year. He didn't look rich, but he was. On the other hand, I knew young men who rushed out to finance expensive cars the moment they got a raise, only to find themselves drowning in debt when life threw them a curveball. They looked rich, but they weren't. And eventually, that appearance faded while the burden of debt remained. The lesson is this: appearances don't pay the bills. Designer labels won't send your children to college. Flashy cars won't fund your retirement. And expensive vacations won't protect you in an emergency. Wealth is not about looking successful. It's about being secure, free, and prepared. And the way to achieve that is by consistently saving, consistently investing, and consistently building equity. When you shift your focus from impressing others to securing your future, everything changes. You begin to see money not as a ticket to temporary status, but as a tool for long-term freedom. You start to value assets over appearances. And over time, while others are struggling to maintain the illusion of wealth, you'll be quietly, steadily building the real thing. So don't fall for the trap of looking rich. Focus instead on becoming rich, because true wealth never needs to shout. It speaks for itself in time. It's a mistake to chase money directly, because money never chases people. it chases value. If you want more money, you have to become more valuable. That means becoming the kind of person who solves problems, who serves others, who creates solutions that make life easier or better for those around you. The truth is, the marketplace doesn't reward need, it rewards value. You don't get paid because you need the money. You get paid because you've created something useful for others. When I was young, I used to think if I just worked harder, the money would come. But I eventually learned that effort alone isn't enough. You can dig ditches all day long and still earn very little, because the value you bring to the marketplace is limited. On the other hand, if you spend time developing yourself, learning new skills, building expertise, and becoming more resourceful, the same hour of your time can suddenly be worth 10 times, even 100 times more. It's not the hours that count, it's what you put into the hours. Think about the doctor who earns hundreds of dollars an hour. It's not because their time is more precious than yours, but because they spent years learning skills that very few people have and everyone needs. They've increased their value to the point where money naturally follows them. Or consider the entrepreneur who builds a product that solves a real problem for thousands of people. That product attracts money not because the entrepreneur wanted to get rich, but because they became valuable in the eyes of others. So instead of asking, how can I make more money? Start asking, how can I become more valuable? Read the books, take the courses, learn the skills, sharpen your abilities, become excellent at what you do. Find ways to serve more people or serve at a higher level. Because when you grow in value, the marketplace will always recognize it. The truth is, wealth is not something you pursue. It's something you attract by the person you become. If you want more money, work harder on yourself than you do on your job. When you do that, money will no longer be something you chase. It will be something that finds you. One of the greatest guards to wealth is humility. The moment pride takes over, wealth starts to slip through your fingers. Ego has a way of convincing you that you've arrived, that you deserve to spend more than you should, that you know everything you need to know. But the truth is, ego spends fast. Wisdom saves slow. Ego tells you to buy the flashiest car on credit so people will notice. Wisdom tells you to keep driving the old one until your investments are strong enough to pay for the new one in cash. I've seen so many people rise quickly in income only to fall just as quickly because they couldn't manage their pride. They thought the money would never run out, so they spent it on appearances instead of building something lasting. But humility teaches you to remember where you came from, to stay grounded even as your financial picture improves. Humility whispers, don't act rich, become rich. Build wealth quietly, not loudly. I remember years ago when I started to make a little more money, my first thought was to upgrade everything at once. Nicer clothes, fancier furniture, more expensive dinners. But I realized very quickly that those things didn't make me wealthier. They made me dependent on a higher lifestyle that could collapse if my income slowed. What kept me steady was learning to act poor while quietly building my reserves. It wasn't about deprivation, it was about discipline. Humility also keeps you teachable. The moment you think you know it all, you stop growing. And when you stop growing, your wealth eventually shrinks. Some of the wealthiest people I've ever met were also the most humble learners. They asked questions. They listened more than they spoke. They didn't let their bank account convince them that wisdom no longer applied. They understood that pride comes before a fall, but humility keeps the door open for more growth, more wisdom, and more opportunities. So let humility guard your wealth. Don't let ego trick you into trading your future for temporary appearances. Stay humble, stay disciplined, stay teachable. Because the truth is, acting poor often keeps you rich. Money, in many ways, is like a language. If you don't learn it, you'll always be lost in translation. You'll make mistakes, you'll sign papers you don't understand, you'll agree to terms that don't favor you, and you'll watch opportunities slip right past because you couldn't read the signs. But the wealthy, they study money the way you'd study Spanish or French. They learn the words, the grammar, the structure, until it becomes second nature. Cash flow, compounding, debt management, asset growth, these are not mysteries, they are vocabulary words in the language of finance. Now, when you first start studying a new language, it feels strange. You stumble, you mispronounce, you forget the rules. But the more you practice, the more fluent you become. Money works the same way. At first, you may not understand what compounding really means, or why cash flow is more important than profit on paper. But as you study, as you practice, it becomes clear, and suddenly, you're speaking wealth fluently. I'll tell you something I learned early. Most people aren't broke because they're lazy. They're broke because they're financially illiterate. They never learned the language. They know how to earn, but not how to manage. They know how to spend, but not how to multiply. I remember when I was first introduced to the idea of compounding. I didn't fully understand it, but I kept studying. I watched how a little bit, given enough time, could turn into a lot. That single principle changed the way I handled money forever. Later, I learned about cash flow, that assets weren't just about value on paper, but about putting money in your pocket month after month. Each concept was like adding a new word, a new phrase, until I could finally carry on a full conversation in the language of wealth. So study money like a language. Don't treat it as a mystery. Don't treat it as luck. Learn the vocabulary, practice the grammar, and speak it daily until it becomes natural. Because fluency in the language of money isn't optional, it's the foundation of financial freedom. Money has a way of testing not just your skills, but your emotions. And if you don't learn how to control those emotions, they will control your wallet. Wealth isn't lost because of lack of opportunity. More often, it's lost because of panic, greed, or impulse. People panic when markets dip, they get greedy when things are going well, and they make impulse decisions in between. The market goes up, they rush in without thought. The market goes down, they rush out in fear. In both cases, emotions are driving the car, and logic is tied up in the back seat. That's no way to build wealth. Let me tell you, I've seen people wipe out years of effort in a moment of emotional reaction. They panic sold their investments at the bottom. They bought things they couldn't afford just to feel good in the moment. They jumped into schemes that promised quick returns because greed got the better of them. And every time, the story was the same. Emotions made the decision, and the wallet paid the price. One of the greatest disciplines you can learn is the ability to pause. Just pause. When something excites you, when something scares you, don't let that feeling push you into a decision. Take a breath, step back, and reflect. Ask yourself, am I making this choice out of wisdom or out of emotion? Most of the time, that pause will save you money, heartache, and regret. I remember when I first started investing, the first time I saw my account dip, I felt the urge to sell everything. That fear felt real, almost unbearable. But then I reminded myself, wealth isn't built in a day, and it isn't lost in a day either. I chose patience over panic, and with time, those investments not only recovered but multiplied. That experience taught me that emotional discipline is financial armor. So the real key is to train your emotions the way you'd train a muscle. Practice patience, build reflection into your routine, and let logic take the lead. Because if you let fear, greed, or impulse make your choices, your wallet will always suffer. But if you control your emotions, your wealth will always have protection. Most people live their lives in short cycles. They're thinking about Friday's paycheck, how to cover this month's bills, or how to make it to the next holiday. And that's why they stay stuck. Wealth is never built in days, it's built in decades. The wealthy think differently. They think about equity, about ownership, about what they'll leave behind for their children and their children's children. They think about legacy, not just income. That shift in perspective is what makes all the difference. When I was starting out, I was just as guilty of short-term thinking as anyone else. I wanted the quick win, the immediate payoff. But I quickly discovered that quick wins vanish, while slow, steady progress compounds into something extraordinary. It's like planting a tree. If you put a seed in the ground today, you can't expect shade tomorrow. But give it 10 years, 20 years, and that same tree can cover a whole yard and feed generations. Wealth works the same way. Slow growth, patient tending, and consistent investment. The trouble is, our emotions crave instant results. That's why people jump at lottery tickets, chase get-rich-quick schemes, or gamble their savings away. They want the thrill now, but the wealthy don't chase thrills. They build foundations. They know that the small, wise decision made today, whether it's saving a little more, investing steadily, or learning a new skill, has the power to multiply massively when time is added to the equation. I've often told people, don't just ask what this decision will do for you this week. Ask what it will do for you in 10 years. That's the filter of long-term thinking. For example, buying that flashy car might feel good for a few months, but investing that same money in assets could mean freedom in a decade. Eating out every day might taste good now. The wealthy understand that legacy is crafted one patient decision at a time. Think in decades, not days, and your future will take care of itself. There's an old story about a farmer who had a goose that laid golden eggs. Every morning, he would walk out and find a brand new treasure waiting for him. But one day, in his impatience and greed, he decided to cut the goose open, hoping to get all the gold at once. Of course, what he found was nothing, and in the process, he destroyed the very source of his wealth. Too many people make that same mistake in life. They damage or neglect the very things that produce their income, and then they wonder why their financial life dries up. Your skills, your business, your health, your relationships, these are your golden geese. They produce the eggs. They are the engines of your wealth. If you don't take care of them, if you run them down, if you overwork them or neglect them, you'll find yourself in the same situation as that foolish farmer, out of options and with nothing left to build on. I've seen people burn themselves out chasing dollars, only to lose their health, and then discover too late that no amount of money can buy back the vitality they sacrificed. I've seen others neglect their skills, stop learning, stop adapting, and suddenly their once thriving careers or businesses begin to fade. They forgot that the goose must always be cared for. When I was coming up, I realized that if I wanted lasting wealth, I had to do more than just make money. I had to guard the source. That meant constantly sharpening my skills, keeping my energy high, and treating my body like the engine that carries me forward. It meant protecting my reputation and my relationships, because trust and character are income sources too. This is why discipline matters. Take time to rest, invest in your learning, exercise and eat well. Spend time with people who energize you instead of drain you. Because the moment you neglect these areas, the quality of your golden eggs begins to decline. And if you lose the goose, the eggs are gone for good. So don't just count the eggs, protect the goose, guard the source of your wealth with the same vigilance you guard your bank account, and the harvest will continue for a lifetime. Most people, when they think about improving their financial situation, immediately ask, how can I earn more per hour? That's poor thinking. It keeps you tied to the clock, always trading your time for money. And the truth is, there are only so many hours in a day, and only so much energy you can give. If your income is chained to the number of hours you work, you'll always be limited. The wealthy think differently. They ask, how can I multiply what I already earn? How can I make money work for me even while I sleep? That shift in thinking is the beginning of real wealth. Multiplication comes through assets that keep producing. A man once told me, while you're working, your money should be working too. That stuck with me. For example, you can earn a wage at your job, but if you take a portion of that wage and invest it in stocks that pay dividends, suddenly your money is creating a new stream of income. Or you might purchase a piece of real estate that provides rental income month after month. Or you could write a book, create a course, or start a small business. Something that, once built, continues to generate revenue long after the initial effort. That's multiplication. I remember when I first grasped this principle. I realized that no matter how hard I worked, I couldn't out-earn the power of multiplication. So, I started small. I took a portion of my income and planted it into investments. It wasn't much at first, but it didn't have to be. The point was to get money flowing in more than one direction. Soon, I noticed a difference. My confidence grew, not because my income doubled overnight, but because I had broken free from the idea that my paycheck was the only source of money in my life. The poor wait for a raise. The wealthy create raises by building streams. You can't control whether your boss gives you another $1 per hour, but you can control how you use the dollars you already have. Put them to work. Multiply them. Build systems where money earns money. Because the day you stop relying solely on earning and start multiplying, that's the day you step into true financial freedom. Most people hear the word debt and immediately think of stress, burden, and sleepless nights. And rightly so, because most of the time, debt is used as a trap. It's used to buy things that lose value the moment you take them home. A car that depreciates, clothes that go out of style, gadgets that gather dust. That kind of debt is consumption debt, and it drains your future to pay for your present. It buys a moment of pleasure at the cost of years of repayment. That's the kind of debt that keeps people broke. But there's another side to the story. Debt, when used with wisdom, can become a powerful tool. The wealthy understand this distinction. They use debt not to consume, but to create. They borrow money to buy assets that generate income, assets that not only pay the debt back, but also keep producing long after the loan is gone. That's good debt. It might be a mortgage on a rental property that pays for itself each month and leaves extra cash flow in your pocket. It could be a business loan that funds equipment or expansion, leading to higher profits. The difference is simple. Bad debt takes money out of your pocket. Good debt puts money in. I remember a time when I saw a friend drown in credit card debt because every new purchase was a way of saying, "Look what I have." The problem was, what he had wasn't paying him back. On the other hand, I watched another man borrow money to purchase farmland. He didn't buy it to show off, he bought it to plant crops. Within a few years, the land had produced enough to not only pay off the loan, but also create an income stream that lasted for decades. Same concept, debt, but two very different outcomes. The rule is this: never use debt to finance your ego. Use it only to finance assets that can outgrow the debt itself. And always approach it with caution. Debt can make you rich if used wisely, but it can also ruin you if used carelessly. Treat it like fire, dangerous if left uncontrolled, but powerful when harnessed with discipline. When you understand the difference between a tool and a trap, you'll never fear debt again. You'll master it. Freedom is one of those words everyone loves, but few people understand what it really takes to achieve it. Most people think freedom means doing whatever you want, whenever you want. But let me tell you, that kind of freedom usually ends in bondage. If you eat whatever you want without discipline, you end up enslaved to poor health. If you spend whatever you want without discipline, you end up enslaved to debt. True freedom doesn't come from a lack of rules. It comes from the right rules, practiced daily with consistency. Discipline is the bridge between where you are and where you want to be. It's not glamorous, but it's powerful. Every act of discipline today creates more choices for you tomorrow. When you save money instead of spending it all, you're buying freedom in the future. The freedom to invest, to retire early, to say yes to opportunities. When you discipline yourself to study, to work hard, to stay consistent, you're buying the freedom of mastery and influence later on. The truth is, people who refuse discipline now will pay a heavier price later in life. I've often said that everyone pays either the price of discipline or the price of regret. Discipline weighs ounces, regret weighs tons. A man once told me, "I can't discipline myself to save. I'd rather enjoy my money." Years later, he found himself with no savings, no investments, and no options. The price of regret was much heavier than the small sacrifices he could have made along the way. Contrast that with another man who disciplined himself to invest a portion of every paycheck for decades. He didn't live flashy, he lived steady, and by the time others were struggling with bills, he was enjoying freedom. The freedom to choose his work, his travel, his generosity. Discipline is not about punishment, it's about preparation. It's about building habits that serve you when motivation runs out. It's about keeping promises to yourself, even when no one is watching. That's what creates real wealth. Not just financial, but personal. So, if freedom is your goal, make discipline your daily practice. Because freedom isn't free, it's the reward of discipline. Most people approach money backward. They get paid, they pay the bills, they buy what they want, and then they look at what's left over, and that becomes their savings. But often, what's left over is nothing. That's why so many people, even with good jobs, never build wealth. The wealthy, on the other hand, flip that order around. They save first, invest next, and then they spend what's left. That small shift in priority makes all the difference between financial stress and financial freedom. When I first started making money, I fell into the same trap as everyone else. I thought the answer to financial problems was simply more income. But I quickly realized that without discipline, no amount of money is enough. If your spending rises every time your income rises, you'll stay stuck in the same place, just with bigger numbers. It's not income alone that creates wealth, it's discipline with income. I learned early to treat savings like a bill, mandatory, non-negotiable. You don't wait until you feel like it. You don't save if there's something left over. You pay yourself first. When you make it even if it's a small percentage, the key is consistency. $10 consistently saved and invested has more power than 100 sporadically put away. I remember meeting a man who never earned more than a modest wage, but he had the habit of saving first for over 40 years. He wasn't flashy, he wasn't loud, but when he retired, he had choices, comfort, and dignity. Why? Because he understood the principle. Spend what's left after saving, not save what's left after spending. It's tempting to think that once you make more, then you'll start saving. But that's a lie people tell themselves. If you can't save when you make a little, you won't save when you make a lot. Wealth starts in habits, not income brackets. So, before you let your money slip through your fingers, remember this simple principle. Pay yourself first and then spend what's left. That one decision can change your entire financial future. Most people finish school, collect their diploma, and believe their education is complete. They step out into the world thinking they're done with learning. But the truth is, that's when real education begins. The classroom gives you the basics, but wealth demands that you stay curious, that you keep learning long after the textbooks are closed. Those who stop learning usually end up stuck, while those who keep learning find themselves growing, adapting, and creating opportunities that others never even see. I remember when I was young, I thought success was about working harder than the next man. And while hard work matters, I later discovered that hard work without learning is like running faster in the wrong direction. You can sweat, you can hustle, you can put in the hours, but if you're not upgrading your mind, you're limiting your results. The wealthy understand this. They treat education not as an event, but as a lifelong process. They read books, listen to recordings, seek out mentors, and study the changing world around them. The truth is, knowledge compounds faster than money. One good idea, learned and applied, can completely change your financial destiny. I can't tell you how many times a single insight from a book or a conversation with a mentor created a breakthrough in my business or my investments. But those breakthroughs only came because I kept myself in student mode, hungry to learn more. Look around today. Technology is changing industries. New markets are opening. Opportunities are shifting. Those who cling to what they learned 10 years ago risk becoming irrelevant. Those who stay curious, who make learning a daily habit, are the ones who rise. Even 15 minutes a day reading, studying, or listening can separate you from the crowd in a year or two. So don't fall into the trap of believing that graduation is the end. Graduation is only the beginning. The wealthy mind never retires from learning. Keep adding new skills, new perspectives, new knowledge. Because when you keep learning while others stop, you'll keep growing while others plateau. And eventually, you'll find yourself standing where they only dreamed they could be. Most people spend their lives chasing the next paycheck. They work hard, they wait for Friday, and then they spend most of it before Monday even arrives. That's how the average person lives, surviving week to week, dependent on wages. But here's the truth. Paychecks will make you a living, but assets will make you wealthy. The difference is simple but profound. A paycheck is temporary. It disappears as soon as you stop working. Assets, on the other hand,